Welcome to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. I am Adam Rank. That is Kimmy Checks. Over there, that is Marcus Grant. Kimmy, though, how are you living?
Hi, guys. Happy week 12. Happy late Thanksgiving. I am like one human form of stuffing and pie. I've eaten so many leftovers that I can't even look or think about Thanksgiving and all the food that I cooked. But I'm good. Marcus, how are you? Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. So I shouldn't tell you then that I am taking what is left of the ham on the bone and using it to make soup. I shouldn't mention that to you.
I ate all the leftovers on Thursday night. I feel like I don't know if that's a life achievement, and I don't know if I should be ashamed, but we do thank you for coming and hanging out with us here today. And if you have any questions, be sure to hit us up on Twitter at NFL Fantasy, or if you're watching the show via YouTube, you can check us out at youtube.com/NFL, and our own Michael F. Florio is there answering as many questions as humanly possible. He's wearing a floral shirt, which means he's going to be allowed onto the show today, so that's exciting news. We always like having Florio joining us, but be sure to drop him a line and say hello and ask your fantasy questions. Now, there's a lot of news to get through, so let's just jump into it. We'll start in Denver. All three Broncos quarterbacks, Drew Lock, Brett Rippon, and Blake Bortles, are out for today versus the Saints. The trio of quarterbacks are deemed high risk after having close contact with teammate Jeff Driscoll, who was put on the reserve COVID list on Thursday after testing positive. Practice squad wide receiver Kendall Hinton, who played quarterback at Wake Forest, is expected to start at quarterback today. So I guess, and here he is, he's fired up. And Kendall was the backup to the Rams backup at Wake Forest, but he is ready to go. He's fired up. So Marcus, are you fired up to play any Broncos player?
I am not. I'm pretty much out on the Broncos this week. I mean, look, I know that there's about 15 minutes when Royce Freeman was like the number one ad on the waiver wire on fantasy Twitter because it looked like he might be the starter at quarterback. It was akin to the 15 minutes that Antonio Brown was a Buffalo Bill and everybody had a great time with that.
It was fun.
Michael F. Florio, close your ears. I hope you didn't hear that. Even with Kendall Hinton getting the start at quarterback, there's talk that he won't play a full complement of snaps at the position. In fact, I saw a report this morning that no one on the Broncos roster has ever seen him take a snap at quarterback. That is why we are running footage of him against Notre Dame, because no one has seen this in the professional ranks. So it'll be a rotation, a little bit of Hinton. I'm sure they'll run some Wildcat with Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. I want no parts of the Bronco offense today at all.
Yeah, well, Marcus said all of that. I second all of that. No, I was in a situation this morning when I was looking at my lineup because I have shares of my guy Noah Fant as well as Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, and I took all of those guys out of my starting lineup. I think there's just a little bit too much volatility happening at that quarterback position for me to have any type of confidence of them going up against Taysom Hill and the New Orleans Saints. So please fade all of your Broncos players this Sunday.
Taysom Hill, a running back playing quarterback. Hinton, a wide receiver playing quarterback. He probably has wide receiver eligibility in a number of different platforms. I'm just saying a low-end wide receiver 3, who knows? There's also some news, and I just wanted to remind you that the Ravens at Steelers game has been moved to Tuesday at 8 p.m. on NBC. This coming after a number of Ravens tested positive for COVID. Fantasy points from that game will count for Week 12. Lamar Jackson was one of those players who tested positive and will not play. RG3 will get the start. This morning, Ian Rappaport reported that tight end Mark Andrews also tested positive for COVID and will miss the matchup. On the other side of the ball, news broke yesterday that Steelers running back James Conner had a test come back positive for COVID. Conner will now miss Tuesday's game versus the Ravens. So, Kimmy, I know before, just to, pull back the curtain here a little bit, you were looking for a running back. You added Benny Snell. Is he a must start this week?
I mean, I picked him up off the waiver wire. I don't know why he was there, but I pulled him, got him, and I'm starting him. because I really do think that this is going to be a huge game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's not going to be as competitive as we thought because Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and so many of their other offensive weapons will not be playing. Because of this, I think Big Ben is going to have those handoffs. You see Benny Snell right there running the ball. That's going to be the situation on Tuesday. So I feel very comfortable getting him in my starting lineup. I know his highest point game was back in week 1 where he put up 11 fantasy points, but now as the lead featured back, I think he has a huge upside and a huge ceiling, so I'm rocking with Benny Snell.
Some news out of Indy. Running back Jonathan Taylor is inactive for today's game with the Titans. Yesterday, the team placed Taylor on the reserve COVID-19 list. Taylor is the Colts' top rusher with 518 yards this season. So the question is, with JTT out, who do we trust starting more today, Nyheim Hines or Jordan Wilkins? Marcus?
I'm going Nyheim Hines. Give me the 57 special. He's the guy that has had the most consistent role in the offense, regardless of what's going on with Jordan Wilkins and Jonathan Taylor. So he's the guy that I sort of trust the most. At a point that I've seen made multiple times. Michael F. Florio brought it up very astutely this week. You talk about a target for a running back. It is 3 times as valuable as a carry. We know that Hines is the pass catcher out of this group, so he's the guy that I feel like has the safer ceiling, and the safer floor as well.
Right, I 100% agree, Marcus. And he was even the lead back last week in Week 11 against the Packers, even when Jonathan Taylor was there. So it just goes to show it's been a crowded backfield situation. It's been confusing for all of us all season long. But if we have learned one thing, it's that Nyheim Hines is going to have continued production. So I'm going to rock with him today.
All right, let's take a look at the notable actives and inactives here for Week 12 as we move into the weekend. Of course, Kyler Murray, there was some concern about him, but he is active, as is Giovanni Bernard. Austin Eckler, also active. We'll talk about him in a moment. But some of the notable inactives for this week: Tua Tagovailoa is going to be out. Ryan Fitzpatrick will get the start. Drew Lock, all those Denver Broncos quarterbacks. Savon Ahmed is going to be inactive, as is Todd Gurley. So fire up Brian Hill. And, of course, a reminder, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, and James Conner are out for Tuesday. Christian McCaffrey, we knew he was likely to miss this week. We were not going to see him at the earliest until Week 14. The Panthers are on a bye in Week 13. In addition to Jonathan Taylor, DJ Chark, Julio Jones, and Adam Thielen, all of them are inactive. And, of course, we see right there at the very bottom, Raheem Mostert has been activated from the injured reserve. They play a late game in Los Angeles this week, so we'll be so check back at around 11:30, 11:45 Eastern, right? Am I getting that, or is that West Coast time? Whatever, 2:30.
That'd be West Coast.
You know what it is. You know when the inactives come out. Don't worry about it. Speaking of a West Coast guy who's playing on the East Coast this morning, though, of course, Austin Eckler is going to be returning to the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't know why this is a question, but apparently a lot of people, there's a kid on Instagram who's like, I don't know if I can trust starting Austin Eckler. Is there any validity to this, Marcus?
There is not. Austin Eckler is playing for the Chargers, which he is playing for you. I mean, look, this is a guy that you probably drafted late in the first round, early second round. He's been fantastic when he's been healthy and on the field. Now he gets a chance to fire back up with Justin Herbert in this offense. I mean, it really is all systems go. This battle station is fully operational there for LA. I can't see any reason why you would keep Austin Eckler on the bench if he's ready to go for the Chargers.
All right, I'm not like Rank or Marcus where I like know all these references and movies and all that fun stuff, but I'm imagining like the guy who has like the glove with jewels in it, and then it's like one missing jewel piece isn't there, and then I'm trying to like.
I think that's Lord of the Rings.
This is very Thanos of you. It's Thanos.
I don't know. Whatever it is, I feel like this is the missing piece. And now that Austin Eckler is active and he's going to be playing for the Los Angeles Chargers, you have him, you have Justin Herbert, now you have Keenan Allen. Me as a Chiefs fan, I'm starting to sweat. This team is going to be very, very good. I'm excited to see what this offense can do with the running back in that offense. So yes, please start him. Don't be like that kid on Instagram. Just start.
Yeah, they have 2 wins. You don't need to sweat it. By the way, I know it's not Lord of the Rings, dork, so don't tweet me. I was joking around. But guess what? Time now for 15 for 15, presented by Geico. And let's start talking about some of our favorite starts of the week. We'll start at the quarterback position. These are the startups for my Stardom and Situm column you can find on NFL.com/start-sit. And, of course, Justin Herbert. I don't know. I don't know. I felt it seems automatic every week that we talk about him, but I just wanted to make sure, like this. Listen, somebody doesn't want to start Austin Eckler this week, so I can't take anything for granted. Taysom Hill, Daniel Jones, we love it. Derek Carr, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, even though he's battling a toe injury, is expected to play. Another current quarterback I like this week is Cam Newton. Marcus, how do you feel about Cam this week?
I'm all about starting Cam Newton this week against the Cardinals. The Cardinals secondary has given up some big plays throughout the season. They're giving up quite a few fantasy points per game. A shocking thing, though, is that they've given up, I think, the third most rushing yards to quarterbacks, which I find surprising because they get to practice against Kyler Murray every day. And I know that Cam hasn't run this year the way he has in past seasons, but he is still New England's second leading rusher. So there could be a chance for him to pick up some fantasy points with his legs. So I would definitely try to get him in the lineup where I could.
All right, now this guy's not going to be rushing like Cam Newton because, like you said, Rink, he has been dealing with a toe injury, but he's good to go. It's Phillip Rivers going up today against the Tennessee Titans. He's had 21-plus fantasy points and 3-plus passing touchdowns in 3 of his last 5 games. I never would have assumed that in this preseason. The Titans are allowing 2 passing touchdowns a game, which is tied for 5th most in the league. I think this is an easy start to get Phillip Rivers into your lineup and have him put up some guaranteed points against this Tennessee team.
Yeah, the one game with that stretch that you're talking about where he didn't get 21 fantasy points, he had 308 passing yards and a touchdown against this Titans defense. Let's take a look at the running backs. And we're going to be starting off with Kareem Hunt, who has a great matchup this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You can, of course, fire up both of those running backs in that situation. Josh Jacobs, ever since he was besmirched by Michael F. Florio, has been out there crushing it. I like Zach Moss, Mike Davis. On the other side of that game in Jacksonville, we do like James Robinson, Giovanni Bernard, Nyheim Hines. I'm still tinkering with these 2 guys. I don't know who I'm going to play out of these 2. I'll figure it out. I'll probably make the wrong decision at some point. These are all Sunday guys, though. Let's talk about Monday night. Is there a running back that you like on Monday night, Kimmy?
Chris Carson, he's coming back, baby, and I'm starting him against the Philadelphia Eagles, who just allowed 16-plus fantasy points to Wayne Gallman in Week 7 and Week 10. Chris Carson, even better than Wayne Gallman, in my opinion. He's had 19-plus fantasy points in all 4 full games that he's played this season. He also managed to be a top 13 running back in those 4 games. So I'm fired up. I'm happy that he's back in this offense. Get him in your lineup. Let's go, Chris Carson.
Absolutely would have Chris Carson in the lineup. Another guy I would have in the lineup is Miles Sanders, also playing in that Monday night game. And it's because, look, if you followed football Twitter for the past week, there were 2 major themes. 1, Turkey is trash, which I feel like is sort of an overreaction. And 2, Carson Wentz is broken. So because of that second thing, I really feel like they're going to try to get the ball in Miles Sanders' hands as much as possible. And even though the Seahawks run defense has been pretty good, they do give up some receiving yards to running back. So this could be a situation where you get Carson Wentz some easy throws, you get Miles Sanders out in space, and you give him a chance to be productive and kind of help your offense along a little bit.
Well, I'm just happy that we can finally talk about the fact that Turkey is garbage. And I think that was very thank you to Mina for bringing that to light here. Let's take a look at the wide receivers. A.J. Brown is a wide receiver I start every week, whether he's got a tough matchup or not. Michael Pittman Jr. in that game. Also like him. I like both Rams receivers this week as well. Bobby Trees and Cooper Kupp. Travis Fulgham on Monday night. Damiere Byrd. Mike Williams. I expect a lot of scoring there in Buffalo. But I had Derek Carr on the list a moment ago. Not unlike Aguilar. Is it time to change that meme, Marcus?
We need a new meme for Nelson Aguilar. I mean, let's just get Swagalore trending or something like that. By the way, can we just take a moment to note that there were 3 USC wide receivers listed in a row on that list because Trojan receivers. Am I right? Look, Nelson Aguilar has been fantastic. You see on the screen 13 or more fantasy points in a slew of games this year. And he is the number 1 wide receiver in this offense going up against a bad Falcons secondary. So this is absolutely a week to get him in. And I believe they have the Jets next week, too. So this can sort of be a twofer with both Nelson Aguilar and Derek Carr in the Raider offense.
Nelson Aguilar, what a bounce back from being meme to now being fantasy relevant. We love it. We hope Adam Rank can also do that because he's tired of getting meme. Anyway, let's talk about Bobby Trees going up against the 49ers. I know Rank mentioned that he liked Bobby Trees as well as Cooper Kupp this week. I completely agree. Robert Woods was the wide receiver number 3 in Week 11. He put up over 30 points against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's had 28-plus points in 2 of the last 4 games. Last time he played San Francisco this season, he had 4 receptions for 20 29 yards and a touchdown. This is an easy start. Both of these wide receivers should be in your starting lineup if you have any types of shares of them.
All right, let's take a look at the tight end boards for Week 12. Darren the Baller Waller, Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry, Dallas Goddard, Zach Ertz not expected to play according to his coach Doug Peterson, Gronk, Austin Hooper, and Bob Tonyan. Tonyan. Listen, this is a Jimmy Graham revenge game in reverse, so you know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be targeting Tonyan an awful lot. And that was 15 for 15 presented by Geico. Up next, we welcome the return of one of my favorite heroes this week, Ahsoka Tano. And that's not a spoiler because she was still alive at the end of Star Wars Rebels. And we knew that Rosario Dawson was cast to play her. So shut up, dorks. That notwithstanding, we're talking fantasy heroes next. Oh, look, it's Josh Allen out there throwing the football, not running. He's getting poised to steal some touchdowns. You're watching NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Here are your stardom defenses for the week. I took the coward's way out. I gave you 4 because this is what I do. Listen, there's not a lot of defenses to pick up. What do you want from me? I do like the Browns this week. The Seahawks might be the one that jump out to you the most because obviously they have not been playing very well this season, but this is a great matchup against the Eagles. And if you're in a dire situation, if you don't have the Saints, because obviously the Saints are very good. Hey, guess who's going up against the Saints in his league of record? Oh, yeah, it would be this guy. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. If you do have some, by the way, Rank, Kimmy, Marcus, you know who we are. Anyways, if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter at NFL Fantasy. And, of course, our own Michael F. Florio is in the comment section of YouTube. Like, don't ever go there. But we're letting him go there today to answer your fantasy questions. So be cool. I don't want any meanness. You reserve that for me. Only I can be mean to Florio. But you know what? Let's take an opportunity right now to answer some fan questions because we like it. We like to be a part of the fun. And this first one is Noah Fant with no quarterback or Hollywood Brown with RG3. Marcus, you got to figure it out here. That's on you.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Fant just because I feel like, he'll run the sort of routes that are easier to get the football to. They're just using Hollywood Brown to run wind sprints down the sideline, and that seems like a low percentage proposition.
Justin Jefferson or Keenan Allen in a PPR league. Kimmy, who are you going with?
Keenan Allen. That shouldn't even be a question. Keenan Allen, please. Emmanuel, Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen is your wide receiver one. I'm sorry that you have such great backups. That's not our fault. Jacoby Meyer or Cole Beasley. I really like Cole Beasley today. He's been an unsung hero for that Buffalo Bills offense. Excuse me. So I'm going to go with him. There it is. Next, Gronk or Goddard in a PPR league, Marcus?
I think I'm going to go Goddard this week. I just don't like Tampa's matchup, so I'm gonna go Goddard.
Yeah, I kind of feel that one as well. All right, and Eckler or James Robinson for Walter? Kimmy?
Oh, this is an interesting one. James Robinson, just because even though Austin Eckler's great, we think you should start him as well. But James Robinson has been consistent all season long. So James Robinson. And am I crazy?
This is a humble brag.
No, that's a tough call. That's the one thing. Like, which one of these great running backs do you want to start? So unfortunately for you,
thank you, Walter White.
Got to make that. Good luck to you this week. Great job though, picking up James Robinson in the absence of Austin Eckler. Okay, that's it. So let's talk a little bit about our fantasy heroes, though. Not necessarily our Star Wars heroes or our superheroes or anything like that. Fantasy heroes. Our starts of the week. Who are some of the players you are going to guarantee are going to score a lot of points this week? Marcus, why don't you start us off?
I'm going to say Dalvin Cook because Dalvin Cook scores a lot of points every week. Look, he's been fantastic. I mean, you're talking about him being one of the top running backs, both in the NFL and fantasy football this season. He's got a fantastic matchup this week. Look, at this point, I know we're starting Dalvin Cook every week. I'm sure people are out there like, oh, of course we're starting to. But, look, the Panthers' defense, the run defense is bad. The Vikings want to run the football a lot, and especially with no Adam Thielen, I think that puts a little bit more of a burden on Cook to go out there and get the ball and be effective. So he's going to have a huge day.
All right, let's stick with a running back for me. I know this one's interesting because Florio's a little bit worried about him, but it's Josh Jacobs. He does have a good matchup going up against the Falcons today, who are allowing the 8th most points in the league, almost 28 points per game this season. Josh Jacobs has been phenomenal. He's had 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games combined. He's also had over 12 fantasy points in 4 straight games. I really think this is going to be a week like week 1 where he goes out and puts up a beast amount of numbers. So start Josh Jacobs and be happy when he gets you plus 25.
I like Josh Jacobs a lot this week, and I also like Darren Waller, who had a great game against the Chiefs on Sunday night and might have even stolen the spotlight. I mean, if the Chiefs hadn't left, or if the Chiefs have let him wide open the way the Raiders did with Travis Kelce. You're not going to cover Travis Kelce at the end of the game, but anyways, I will caution because I do know that there is a little trend developing over the past couple of weeks. He's on this weird streak since the Raiders bye where he will score double digits one week and then turn around and not score double digits. So if you're one of those people who walks up to the roulette wheel and is like, oh my gosh, red hasn't come up in a while, and you want to sit there and lose all your money, fine. Then bench Darren Waller because he was good last week. I'm going to be sitting here laughing because I'm going to start Darren Waller this week against the Atlanta Falcons, who have allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends this season. You'd be a fool not to start him. All right, that is that. I got a question for you. Is the idea of starting Tom Brady the most unappealing thing you've seen this week since somebody tried to serve you cranberries out of a can? What is that garbage? Why are you doing this? Well, we've got some quarterbacks this week who can be the proper side dish for your fantasy lineup. You're watching NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. And there is my guy, Teddy Bridgewater, warming up here before his return to Minnesota for a revenge game. I know Vikings fans don't hate him. There's no animosity there. By the way, I saw him in Radio City Music Hall moments after he was drafted, and he was very excited. I saw him like, oh my gosh, congratulations, and he was so elated. So I've always liked him ever since. I don't know. That was not for nothing. Anyways, let's take a look at the notable actives and inactives. Some big names are on this list of players who will not be playing this week. Tua Tagovailoa, Drew Lock, and the entire quarterback room for the Denver Broncos. Giovanni Bernard, Austin Eckler are active. Todd Gurley is not active. That's going to be a big one. And, of course, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, James Conner are out for Tuesday, so that's huge. Also, as expected, Christian McCaffrey is not going to play this week. Jonathan Taylor, we found out Saturday morning that he was going to be inactive. He is placed on the reserve COVID-19 list. DJ Chark, Julio Jones, Adam Thielen. That's a pretty good receiver group right there. They are not going to be playing this week. Raheem Mostert is going to be active, hopefully today, this afternoon in Los Angeles. Now, welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. I am Adam Rank. That's Kimmy Checks. That is Marcus Grant. And it's time right now to play a little fantasy face-off because last night I couldn't get my Disney Plus working, so I watched Face-Off instead. And you know what? I don't regret the decision. But let's put some players in the head. The bald guy, he steals that movie. But anyways, we're going to put some players head-to-head situation and get it started. How about this? Kimmy, Justin Herbert or Josh Allen today? Who do you got?
Josh Allen, he's had 27-plus points in the last 2 games. It's a home game, so I love Justin Herbert, but Josh Allen.
Bills have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, though. Anyways, better start Tom Brady, Cam Newton. Marcus, who do you got?
We're going Cameron Jarrell Newton. Just don't like that matchup for Brady against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Aaron Rodgers or Taysom Hill? Who do you got, Kimmy?
Aaron Rodgers. He's actually a quarterback.
Wow, I don't know about that. Listen, Taysom Hill, I don't know. He runs the football. Cam got 76 rushing yards against that defense, but we'll see what happens. Derek Carr, Matt Ryan. Who do you got, Marcus?
I'm going Derek Carr. Matt Ryan has not been good when Julio Jones is not playing, and Julio Jones is not playing.
The Raiders, though, have allowed the 9th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. Let's move to the running back position. Damien Harris or Brian Hill versus the Raiders. Who do you got, Kimmy?
Oh, Brian Hill does have a good matchup, but I'm still going to rock with Damien Harris. I think there's just more consistency there. And Brian Hill, I don't think he has that same touchdown upside that Todd Gurley had. So Brian Hill for me.
Let's talk about Cardinals running backs. Which one do you want, Marcus?
Let's see. Chase Edmonds. He's been the more productive guy over the course of the season, so I'm going that way.
Drake reached double-digit points last week and hasn't done back-to-back weeks with double-digit points since weeks 5 and 6. Wayne Gallman at the Bengals or Nyheim Hines versus the Titans. Who do you got, Kimmy?
Yo, this is crazy. I'm rocking with Wayne Gallman. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 4 consecutive games, and it's not as crowded as a backfield as that situation down there for the Colts.
He's been very consistent ever since he's taken over that role with the New York Giants. All right, Ronald Jones versus the Chiefs. David Montgomery versus the Packers. Who do you got, Marcus?
As much as it hurts my heart to go against Rojo, I'm going against Rojo. That's mostly because David Montgomery doesn't have to share snaps or touches with any other running back, really. Rojo is still splitting with Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, I got you. David Montgomery, double-digit fantasy points in 5 out of his last 6 games. Wide receiver position, Allen Robinson versus the Packers. Tyler Boyd versus the Giants. Who do you got, Kimmy?
Am I crazy for saying Allen Robinson? Your guy Mitch Trubisky is back at quarterback. Tyler Boyd, I know he did take a hit because Joe Burrow is out for the season. So YOLO. Let's do Allen Robinson. Hey.
You know, Allen Robinson had 7 receptions in both games last season, over 100 yards. He did have close to 30 targets. But I like Allen Robinson as well. What about Christian Kirk versus the Patriots or Michael Pittman versus the Titans, Marcus?
This is a tough call for me, but I'm going to go Michael Pittman. I am a little bit worried about the Kyler shoulder injury, even though I know he's playing. Also because Christian Kirk's targets have been really inconsistent this year.
Yeah, it's a tough call. No Larry Fitzgerald for the Cardinals. The Patriots have allowed 7 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers over the last 4 games, but still you got some injury concerns. What about Cooper Kupp or DJ Moore, Kimmy?
I'm waiting for you to tweet about DJ Moore. So I'm going to rock with Cooper Kupp on this one. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 8 of the last 9 games. And I'm just waiting for you to tweet about DJ Moore. So just putting it out on a platter for you.
That'll be at 12:45 Eastern. I will tell you whether I'm starting or sitting DJ Moore this week. Antonio Brown versus the Chiefs or Curtis Samuel versus the Vikings. Marcus.
I'm going to go Curtis Samuel here just because, look, the Viking defense we've been picking on all year long, and he's been very versatile in that Carolina offense, especially with Christian McCaffrey not there.
Yeah, but Antonio Brown, back-to-back weeks with at least 13 fantasy points. It's going to be a tough one. But anyways, we move on now because it's time for Fantasy Insurance presented by Geico. And a lot of news around the league, so let's talk some of our favorite sleepers who could fill in this week. Kimmy, why don't you get us started?
Dare I bring up Jameson Crowder? Going up against the Miami Dolphins today. Sam Darnold is coming back at quarterback, which means good things for Jameson Crowder. He averages 19 fantasy points per game in weeks 1 through 8 when he had Sam Darnold at his starting quarterback. That was 5th most amongst all wide receivers. He also had 11.5 targets a game with Sam Darnold. So I think with him coming back at quarterback, he's going to have an amazing matchup against the Dolphins, and he should be a sneaky little sleeper.
There's one thing we know about the Jets. They love their slot receivers, so Jameson Crowder seems like a pretty good call there. I'm going to stay in the division and go with Zach Moss. And the Bills running backs have been sort of a mixed bag this year, but I do like the matchup against the Chargers. They've been giving up a lot of rushing touchdowns lately. In fact, they've given up at least 1 rushing touchdown in 5 straight games. So Moss is the guy who, at least in the backfield, gets those opportunities down near the end zone. So I think you can count on him to get the ball between the 20s and maybe pop in a rushing touchdown or 2.
You know what? I really loved Kimmy's pick of Jamison Crowder, but the Jets are absolutely in love with Denzel Mims. And this is something that Mike Garafolo talked about on GMFB on Saturday, is that they love the way he's going up and making those kind of contested catches. And I know it's going to be hard to stand out in this rookie class, but Denzel Mims is really showing something, which is probably going to be more for next season than anything else when there's a new coach, maybe a new quarterback, things like that. But he's had 7 targets in 3 out of his last 4 games, averaging just over 6 targets per game since week 7, which is the most on the New York Jets. And that was Fantasy Insurance presented by Geico. Now, Taysom Hill becomes a starting quarterback, and all of a sudden, he wants to start stealing touchdowns from Alvin Kamara the way Tom Cruise stole the show from Ben Stiller in Tropic Thunder. Will Kamara deliver touchdowns like McConaughey delivered that TiVo? Well, we'll talk about it next as NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico rolls on. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Time now to answer some of the burning questions. I am Adam Rank. That is Kimmy Checks. That is Marcus Grant. And let's dive right. Taysom Hill was the quarterback 3 last week. Do you trust starting him against the Broncos today? Who would you start over Taysom Hill?
All right, I'm going to start him over some other guys who were on your stardom board. What about Derek Carr? Maybe a little Daniel Jones? Marcus?
I would say Justin Herbert for sure. I'm starting over Taysom Hill. Josh Allen, Cam Newton. I would probably start ahead of him, and I would consider Derek Carr as well. It's sort of a toss-up, but those are the only guys that I would really consider starting ahead of Taysom Hill this week.
Wait a minute. So you guys are starting Taysom Hill over Patrick Mahomes, Kyler, Russell Wilson?
Look,
you're starting him over Patrick Mahomes?
Yes.
What is happening?
That's exactly what I'm saying, right?
I'm
starting him over. Don't start Patrick Mahomes.
You didn't say Patrick Mahomes. You didn't say you would start him over Patrick Mahomes. I can only assume that you're starting Taysom over Patrick Mahomes, right? Nobody's answering that question. Listen. Why am I the bad guy? Why am I the bad guy for pointing that out? All right, let's talk about his teammate, Alvin Kamara. Last week, Taysom Hill stole 2 touchdowns. We've seen this from other quarterbacks. Josh Allen loves to do this. Cam Newton loves to do this. So are we worried about Alvin Kamara?
I am. I'm a little bit worried about Alvin Kamara. I mean, not so worried that I'm going to put him on my bench or anything. The touchdowns is one thing because you certainly, part of what has made him so valuable is his ability to get in the end zone. The other part that worries me, though, he had, I think, just a couple of targets, did not have a catch for the first time in his NFL career last week, wasn't targeted all that much. Those are the 2 things that we love about Alvin Kamara. So if they're not happening, then it is a little bit concerning to have him in the lineup.
Great. 55 games played in his career, his very first one without a catch. Like Marcus said, we don't pull Alvin Kamara out of your starting lineup, but you would hope that Taysom Hill now realizes that he earned a spot as the starting quarterback, and now it's fine to pass off the ball to Alvin Kamara and allow him to get in the end zone. It's not going to hurt you, Taysom Hill. You are fine.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. You got to start him. I mean, what are you going to do? Start Travis Homer? I think you're fine. I know it's a little disconcerting. I think there'll be a more of an effort to get Alvin Kamara involved this week, so I'm not going to be sweating it too much. What about Tyler Boyd, though? Brandon Allen is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. Kimmy, are we worried about Tyler Boyd?
I think we've seen that Tyler Boyd can take a little bit of a hit, but amongst all of those wide receivers for the Bengals, Tyler Boyd is still fine. I'm still rocking with him. I'm still going to start him. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 9 out of 10 games this season. I think even with the change at quarterback, he's still a wide receiver 1.
He's definitely going to be in my lineup. I wouldn't worry about it. The Bengals are still going to have to throw the football. And I come back to last year where nobody's starting Brandon Allen, but in 2 of his 3 starts, he did support a 100-yard receiver. It was Cortland Sutton. It was Noah Fant. So I think Tyler Boyd can still keep his value sort of up with Brandon Allen at QB.
Yeah, he has the most sustainable production out of all of those Bengals wide receivers. And one other wide receiver I would like to talk about, Allen Robinson. He's got Mitchell Trubisky back as his starting quarterback. Marcus, are you worried about Allen Robinson at all? And how big are the Bears going to win today?
I mean, from a macro standpoint, I am worried about Allen Robinson. I want good things for him. I want him to have a quality quarterback in his life. As for the more micro effects of it, no, not really. He's been making lemonade out of lemons for a while now, so I'm not too concerned. He is the primary target in that passing game, whether it's Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, Jay Cutler, whatever. So you're still starting him. You're still hoping he gets a decent target volume. And the Bears, they're playing they're playing the Packers. They're probably not going to win. Sorry.
That wasn't the question.
Rank.
How big are they going to win? Was the question.
By negative 10?
That's not accurate.
Rank, do you remember when the Bears could have gotten Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson? Do you remember that?
I don't recall that at all.
Just is that selective amnesia. I agree with Marcus. I think there's a little bit of worry with Allen Robinson, but he's been good all season long. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 9 of 10 games this season. He's had 2 different quarterbacks that he's played with. I think he's going to be fine with Mitch back in the starting lineup.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those things that our situation in Chicago is so dire that everybody is celebrating the return of Mitchell Trubisky. That's how bad it is. We envy the Broncos right now. But that's the way it is. But I think Allen Robinson will continue to be great. Hopefully they can snap their losing skid this week. All right, let's roll the animation because we're going to take a break. And when we return, it's time for our top scorers predictions, must-starts, boom or bust players, and more. Kickoff is just 15 minutes away. You're watching NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Time now for 15 minutes to kick off, presented by Geico. And here are the Week 12 notable actives and inactives. Some of the inactives, Tua Tagovailoa and Savon Ahmed will be out for the Miami Dolphins. Drew Lock and the entire quarterback room for the Denver Broncos are going to be out. Todd Gurley also inactive. And a reminder, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, James Conner all out. But active players are Kyler Murray, Giovanni Bernard, Austin Eckler is returning to our lives, and some other notable inactives this week. Christian McCaffrey will not see him until Week 14. Jonathan Taylor, DJ Chark, Julio Jones, Adam Thielen, all out this week. Raheem Mostert was activated from the injured reserve list. Of course, they have an afternoon game in Inglewood today. We'll see if he is going to be in the 49ers lineup or not. And that was 15 minutes to kickoff, presented by Geico. And joining the show right now, Michael F. Florio is going to be here, and he's been answering questions diligently. So before we throw it to him, Kimmy Marcus, who do you think is the most asked about player on this Sunday morning?
I'm going to guess Austin Eckler, just because everyone's so excited he's back.
I'm going to double down. I'm going to say Austin Eckler as well.
All right. Who is it, Florio?
You two are good. It was, in fact, Austin Eckler. There was a ton of Austin Eckler questions this morning, and it's pretty much easier for me to tell you the running backs I said I would use over him than I would use Eckler over. It was Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, James Robinson, Derrick Henry, and that was really it. Like, I have Austin Eckler on a ton of fantasy teams. I was so excited to draft him this year. I have him ranked as the RB12. I'm starting him in all those leagues I've been waiting on him in. I think if you have Austin Eckler, unless you have multiple other stud running backs, you get him back in your lineup today.
Love it. Yeah, I don't think there should be any hesitation to get Austin Eckler back. By the way, if you just heard my alarm, that means I just tweeted it out. I am not starting DJ Moore today.
Get him in your lineups.
Can I get some air horns? Adjust your lineups By the way, I did my two receivers that I'm starting over him are DK Metcalf and DeAndre Hopkins. But enough about me and my tweets. Let's get to some fan tweets right now and see what the people need to know. All these decisions they need to make. So Juju or Mike Williams, Marcus, which way are you going in this one?
I am probably going to go with what's a tough call. I think I'm going to go with Mike Williams. I just think that's going to be a higher scoring game, and he has more downfield targets.
Love it. All right, next question. Thoughts on Fitzmagic over Matty Ice this week? What do you think, Kimmy?
Ooh, I kind of like that. I think we've seen that Matt Ryan does not play well when Julio Jones is not playing for the Falcons. So with Julio out today, though I hope Calvin Ridley also gets good shares of the ball, maybe rock with Fitzmagic. He was good in fantasy football before they pulled him for Tua.
It's a revenge game for him as well, going up against the New York. Right, he played for the Jets. Am I remembering this correctly? Giovanni Bernard or Brian Hill in a half-point PPR. Florio.
I'm going to go with Gio here. I think with Joe Burrow being out, the Bengals are going to look to run the ball a lot, where I could see the Falcons just relying on Matt Ryan throwing the ball more than normal. So I'll go with Gio against the Giants. I like the matchup too this week.
All right, we love Gio this week. Michael Thomas or A.J. Brown. Florio, answer this one. I refuse. I'm recusing myself.
I have Michael Thomas ranked higher. A.J. Brown is a guy you normally start every single week, but it's a tough matchup against the Colts, who held him in check a couple weeks ago.
I'm trying to think of the wide receiver list that you have that there's some who is slotted ahead of him. They must have Devontae Adams. It's got to be the other. That's the only guy I think.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, there's a couple. Not a lot. All right, there you go. So start. Who was it? Michael Thomas? There it is. All right. Hey, guess what? Those are all our fan questions, and time right now for Sunday Funday! Sunday Funday! Who is going to pop off this week? The top scorer. Let's start with you, Florio. Who is going to be your top scorer this week?
I think the top scorer is going to come against my Buffalo Bills, but I think it's going to be Keenan Allen. He has been playing so great as of late, and he's averaging nearly 23 fantasy points per game in games that Justin Herbert starts and Keenan Allen does not get hurt in. He leads the NFL in target share. This guy is just so money each and every single week, and I think this could be a high-scoring game so he could get even more volume than normal.
Florio, I'm going to rock with the running back. You said you would start over Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen's teammate. It's Kareem Hunt going up today against Jacksonville. He's had 16-plus fantasy points in 2 of the last 4 games. We know that he plays even better football when Nick Chubb is in the lineup like he is this week. Jacksonville are allowing the 6th most fantasy points to running backs this season, over 27 fantasy points. Kareem Hunt, please go out and have yourself a day.
Well, I'm going to go with Florio said he's going with a guy against his Bills. I'm going with a guy for his Bills, Josh Allen, who we started to see the last couple of weeks. He looks like the Josh Allen we saw early in the season. They're spreading the ball around. And I know John Brown is hurt. That really hasn't necessarily slowed him down a ton. Stephon Diggs is still there. Plus, there's still the threat of him scoring some rushing touchdowns. And who knows, maybe they even throw him a touchdown this week. So I think Josh Allen has a big day.
By the way, I wanted to take a moment to call out the hot garbage that Florio is putting out there, trying to do the reverse jinx by talking about Keenan Allen. Oh, look how clever I am. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers, though, as my guy who's going to pop off this week. Because it's undoubtedly going to happen because he's going to score like 90 fantasy points. Don't roll any highlights. Don't roll. I said don't roll any highlights of this guy. I don't need this. I see enough of this. Stop running the highlights. We're done. Aaron Rodgers is my guy. Can we go? Back the camera. Back the camera. Let's talk about starting player we're worried about this week. Kimmy, let's go to you.
I'm a little bit worried about Ryan Tannehill going up today against the Colts. 1, it's a really tough matchup. And 2, Ryan Tannehill hasn't been as fantasy relevant as he was in the beginning of this season. He's had fewer than 18 fantasy points in 5 of his last 6 games, as well as fewer than 116 passing yards in 2 of the last 3 games. So 1, the matchup's tough, and 2, he's just not been so hot.
That is true. He has slowed down quite a bit. Kyler Murray hasn't really slowed down this year, but I do worry about him this week against the Patriots, in part because I am a little bit concerned about the shoulder injury. I know he's starting. I know the Cardinals say that he is good to go, but I mean, when we saw him last time against the Seahawks, he didn't look completely right throwing the football, and I wonder if that's going to be a lingering issue. The other part of it is the Patriots have been fairly good against quarterbacks, giving up the 9th fewest fantasy points per game to the position. So those two things combined, I can't advocate you sitting him, but I am worried about what his production numbers might be.
I think I have to start off by saying I'm sorry in advance to Kimmy because the player that I am worried about this week is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He has been really He's been really reliable as of late, but the ceiling just hasn't been there. He has fewer than 14 fantasy points in 5 of his last 7, and the Bucs have allowing the fewest rushing yards per game to running backs, and they've just been really good at limiting fantasy points to the position as well. So I'm worried about him this week.
I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week. I don't know. He just seems so consistent. I don't think he's going to have a 30-point game, but I think it's relatively easy to get double-digit fantasy points. I don't know. That's just me. Let's talk a little bit, though. Let's stay in that game. Tom Brady. And one of the things I'm most concerned about is he going to shake Patrick Mahomes' hand? That is the thing. I'm glad that Kyle Brandt has brought this to light because I never thought that I needed, I cared, but now I do. I'm like, this is weird. And it's just because he's it's the guys he's dismissive of. He's dismissive of Nick Foles, who beat him in the Super Bowl. He's dismissive of Jared Goff. But any superstar, even if he loses to him, he runs out there. It just seems like a Soch move to me. Okay, big leaguer. Now I'm starting to turn on Tom Brady, and I never thought that I would. Let's talk about running backs, though, for Week 13. Marcus, who are you leaning on?
I'm leaning on Nick Chubb. And I think this could extend to Kareem Hunt as well. So basically Brown's RB. But let's talk specifically about Nick Chubb against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know the Browns primarily want to run the football. Chubb has been fantastic all year long. I mean, this is a guy who, had he not missed time with an injury, very well could be a top 5, maybe even a top 3 running back right now. So I look for him to get plenty of work against a defense that struggles to stop the run.
I like that call, Marcus. And a running back that I'm starting in a lot of leagues this week is Wayne Gallman. You heard Kimmy talking about him earlier and about how he has been a touchdown machine as of late, and he really has been. And the Bengals this week, who he gets, have given up the 3rd most rushing yards per game at over 120 rushing yards per game to running backs. I like his chances of finding the end zone, and I like his chances of getting more yards than normal. I think it is a good week to start Wayne Gallman. I have him as a top 15 running back.
Guys, I'm not scared of anything. That's why I'm not scared of starting Derrick Henry today against the Colts. I know I was worried about Ryan Tannehill, his quarterback, but Derrick Henry, he's a different kind of beast. 100-plus rushing yards in 3 of his last 4 games. He just put up over 20 points in Week 11 against the Baltimore Ravens. Another really tough matchup. He's averaging over 18 fantasy points per game this season. He's the RB number 5. A matchup ain't no big deal for Derrick Henry. Please still start him. We're fine.
I agree wholehearately, and I guess I should throw a little shout out for Michael Davis. We won't see CMC this week, and we won't see him until at least Week 14. Because why shouldn't a team have a Week 13 bye? Why are there teams on a bye in Week 13? That doesn't make any sense. But Mike Davis has scored over 16 fantasy points per game since Christian McCaffrey has been out. The Minnesota Vikings have allowed the 8th most rushing yards per game to running backs this season. The Vikings. They're Vino. They're why? Vikings in name only. You can start them. I know that you still think it's a good defense. It's not a good defense in Minnesota. I'm telling you right now. We saw it last week. The fraudulent Cowboys defeating the fraudulent Vikings. Anyways, let's talk about wide receivers. Speaking of Minnesota, Florio, who do you got?
Sticking with the Vikings, I think Justin Jefferson is an absolute must play this week. He's been a little up and down, but it really has nothing to do with matchups or anything. It's just a matter of if his offense is the Dalvin Cook show that week, then he hasn't really been as involved. But even if it is the Dalvin Cook show this week, I think there's enough volume to make Jefferson a wide receiver 1 with Adam Thielen and Irv Smith Jr. being out. So I just think that Kirk Cousins is going to lock in on Justin Jefferson and throw his way a good amount this week.
If there was any opportunity for Travis Fulgham to have a bounce back after only scoring less than 2 fantasy points these last 2 weeks combined, it's it's tomorrow against the Seattle Seahawks for Monday Night Football. He's had 12-plus fantasy points in the first 5 games this season, and then he fell off. However, the Seahawks are allowing the most fantasy points to wide receivers this season, as well as allowing 14 different top 20 wide receivers in the 10 games played. So Travis Fulgham, please bounce back.
I think Fulgham bounces back. I think the Devontae Parker success kind of continues this week. I mean, we know there's no Preston Williams. He's still injured. It's a fairly good matchup against the Jets, who really have some issues injury-wise in their secondary. So you've got that. Throw in the fact that We know Savon Ahmed is not playing. There's going to be issues in the backfield running the football. We've got Ryan Fitzpatrick back in there to go YOLO all over this thing. So I can see a lot of targets for Devontae Parker. I think big volume is coming his way.
Yeah, I really like that call. And, of course, Ryan Fitzmagic, revenge game. So we always love that as well. I like Stephon Diggs. Oh, I love it. Thank you for bringing that in. Let's talk about Stephon Diggs, though. We talk about Josh Allen and how great he is. I really still believe that Stephon Diggs doesn't get enough love for everything that he has meant to this offense. It's rare, we see some of these big trades that actually work out, for both teams. The Vikings go out there and get Justin Jefferson. He's turned out to be a stud wide receiver. The Bills have gotten a great wide receiver as well. And I know this matchup against the Chargers is a little difficult. The Chargers have been pretty good against receivers over the entirety of the season, but I will note that over the last 4 games, they've allowed 5 receiving touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. So there's an opportunity for Stephon Diggs in this one. And again, we keep talking about it over and over again. We expect this to be a high-scoring game, so hopefully all the players that we are starting can go out there and eat. But let's talk about a boom or bust situation for this week. We're taking a mighty swing on here. It's either going to be super awesome or it's going to be terrible. Kimmy, why don't you lead us off?
All right, well, I'm going to rock with T. Higgins. And this is such a boom or bust situation because we understand that Joe Burrow is out for the rest of the season. That means that Brandon Allen is now the starting quarterback. We were saying that doesn't mean anything to Tyler Boyd. You still start Tyler Boyd, and I'm still going to start T. Higgins. He's had 7+ targets in 7 of his last 8 games. Like Marcus mentioned, the Bengals are still going to have to throw the ball to stay competitive. So I know it's a big boom or a big bust, but T. Higgins, give me something.
I'm going to go Robbie Anderson here. And look, he hasn't had a touchdown since week 1. He hasn't had 100 yards in a game since week 5. He hasn't had 70 yards. He hasn't had 65 yards in a game since week 7. But the matchup is great against the Vikings. So if there's ever a chance for him to kind of get back on the right side of things, you'd think it would be this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jalen Reagor this week. You heard Kimmy talking up Travis Fulgham earlier, and I like him as well. The matchup is just so great. They allow the most fantasy points in history to wide receivers, the most yards in history to wide receivers. So it is a great matchup, but with the reports that Carson Wentz is, potentially losing some playing time to Jalen Hurts, I think that makes Reagor a little bit more boom or bust. So I love his upside, but the floor is not quite as safe.
And of course, I love both those receivers on Monday. I like all the receivers on Monday night that you can go and play. And it should be noted too that if you're in a league that doesn't allow you to have a contingency plan where you have to make a decision on the Steelers and the Ravens on Sunday afternoon, that go and try to pick up as many players on Monday as possible. Pick up David Moore, because just in case that game gets canceled, that gives you the most time to have a little bit of wiggle room and, of course, pick up the Seahawks defense as well. Now, I did mention this earlier a couple of minutes ago. DJ Moore is going to be on my bench this week. And listen, for anybody who's not following along, this is thank you. This is played out pretty weird. Like anytime that I put DJ Moore on my bench, he goes off and has an amazing game. When DJ Moore is in my lineup, he doesn't play very well. So I'm doing this as a favor for you. And one of the things that I did this week is I made a trade in that league. I had Aaron Rodgers on my bench, and I was able to get DK Metcalf. So now it's real easy for me to start DeAndre Hopkins and DK Metcalf. But as always, check out Michael Florio's rankings. Michael, how do you feel about DJ Moore, though? I kind of like the matchup. I don't think that it's a bad start for him. What would you recommend to people?
I have him as, I believe, wide receiver 24. So I agree with you, Rank. He's very boom or bust, but I do like the upside in the matchup this week.
And let's go down the horn. What do we think about DJ Moore? Kimmy?
If you have him on your bench, he's going to put up 25, 26 fantasy points. So, yes, rock with DJ Moore. Rank is the curse.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like fantasy Groundhog Day. DJ Moore is on the bench. That means fantasy spring comes early.
All right. Well, thank you so much for checking out the show. Good luck to you this week, week 12. We appreciate you checking in here with us. This has been Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you next week.